advice could you give to Oscar and Lando as they chase their first up against somebody of the likes of Max Verstappen?
Well, I mean, it's not their first champion. Obviously, they've won other championships in other categories, so it's not something. I mean, I'm not one to really want to give advice to them, but I mean, in that scenario, it's challenging when you're in the team. The pressure is high. It's definitely a time where you really have to put your blinkers up. You have to block absolutely everything from the outside. Because there's so much coming in, positive and negative, and also you really have to be cutthroat. That's what Max is. He's gonna take this from them if they don't do the same. They've got to be pushing, and you've got to dig deep to be able to. Firstly, to be able to hold on someone like Max and in the car that he's in at the moment, but also for either of them to come out ahead. Consistency is key, and you've seen that from Max in the last few races.
Sage advice.
What would you do if after 7 world titles, you arrived at Ferrari and everything started to go wrong? But just when everyone thinks you're done for, you rediscover your magic. Is Lewis Hamilton finally ready to return glory to Ferrari? But the turning point came in Austin. The United States Grand Prix marked the beginning of a technical, but also psychological transformation. Ferrari introduced a radical configuration package, designed to improve the car's mechanical balance. For the first time all season, Hamilton felt the car respond. And that little spark was enough to reactivate something that seemed off: his faith in the project. From then on, until arriving in Mexico, the change was evident. In the press conferences prior to the event at the Autódromo Hermanos Rodríguez, Hamilton no longer spoke with frustration. The tone of voice was different, slow but confident. His words were not those of a pilot resigned to surviving the rest of the year. They were those of someone who had found a new purpose. "I finally feel like I have control of the car," he said. But that phrase hides much more than it appears. It means, in essence, that for the first time since signing with Ferrari, Hamilton had managed to establish a genuine connection with the car. He no longer drove it with distrust. Now he drove it with intention. This change in mentality is not a simple anecdotal detail. In modern Formula One, the difference between an unsure driver and a fully confident driver can mean several tenths per lap, more aggressive decisions, better tire management, and above all, a team starting to align around a natural leader. What happened between Austin and Mexico was, in reality, the birth of a new stage. One in which Hamilton is not only present at Ferrari, begins to leave its mark. The work on the simulator was exhaustive. He spent entire weeks in Maranello, analyzing every parameter of the SF25 with the technical team. But most importantly, according to several internal sources, his attitude also changed. He stopped focusing on what the car couldn't do, and started working with the team to maximize what it could deliver. The language changed. The energy inside the box changed. The direction of the technical project, too. Suddenly, Hamilton's statements began to take on a more constructive, even strategic tone. He spoke openly about using the final 5 races of the year as a proving ground for 2026. Not with the goal of giving up this year, but to build something truly competitive in the next regulatory era. It was a strong message which generated concern within the team, but it also revealed a maturity and long-term vision that few pilots in history have known how to apply in times of crisis. It is in this context that Mexico becomes much more than a race. It becomes the stage where a champion feels capable of fighting again, where Ferrari begins to remember what it means to have a leader in his fullness, and where history could be beginning to turn, not with a spectacular coup, but with the kind of quiet transformation that defines the true greats of this sport. Lewis Hamilton, aware of these particularities, turned this race into a test bed for his transformation within Ferrari. Unlike other weekends, where preparation focuses on progressive adjustments and evolution on the fly, what Hamilton did before the Mexican GP was exhaustive tactical planning, where every detail of the car and every physiological reaction of his body was anticipated weeks in advance. Altitude is the first great enemy. At 2,240 meters above sea level, the air in Mexico City contains approximately 25% less oxygen. This directly affects aerodynamic performance, because the spoilers generate less load, making the cars have less grip, especially in high-speed corners. But the most dangerous consequence is thermal. With less air available, the cooling systems struggle to dissipate the heat generated by the engine, brakes, and ERS. This is where most equipment loses performance, or directly breaks down. Hamilton, who has already won at this circuit in the past, understood better than anyone that this is not a track that can be attacked without being prepared on a technical and physical level. His focus began in Maranello with full days in the simulator. But it was not limited to replicating track conditions. Together with engineers, he developed new power unit maps designed specifically for the long straights of the Mexican layout, where it is critical to maintain efficient energy recovery without overheating the hybrid system. The data collected in Austin was crucial. There it was identified that the SF-25 generated too much temperature in the power unit during short and rapid braking sequences, something that would be amplified in Mexico. To fix this, the team implemented a new cooling package, with slightly enlarged air intakes and a redesign of the liquid cooling system's internal baffles. Hamilton was the one who pushed the team to test these concepts in simulation, forcing extreme situations to anticipate possible performance failures. In parallel, and this is something that surprised even the Ferrari technicians, Hamilton subjected his body to preparation at real altitude. Through controlled hypoxia training, he replicated Mexico City's partial pressure of oxygen to adapt his cardiovascular system. This type of training is more common in elite cyclists or endurance athletes, but very few Formula One drivers use it with such intensity. The objective was not only to improve their physical capacity, but also to refine cognitive perception under conditions of thermal stress and low oxygenation, two factors that usually affect decision-making capacity in a race. But the work didn't end there. In collaboration with Ferrari's strategy department, exclusive thermal and dynamic models were developed for this GP. Brake management was another major concern. On a circuit with heavy braking such as the entrance to Foro Sol and Turn 1, overheating of the system can cause fading in the pedal response, loss of pressure and, in extreme cases, mechanical failures. Hamilton recommended adjusting braking distribution in real time from the cockpit during the race, a maneuver that only drivers with high control of the car's electronic systems can execute without losing pace. In addition, tire degradation was treated with special attention. Unlike other tracks where the rubber degrades due to abrasion, in Mexico it does so due to temperature. When the tire exceeds a certain thermal threshold, it loses grip almost instantly. Ferrari, with direct help from Hamilton, created a thermal windows simulation where the optimal pressure levels, type of compound and ideal number of laps for each stint were determined. This data allowed the team to define ultra-precise stopping strategies designed to adapt to the variable conditions of Mexican asphalt, where grip can change in minutes due to altitude and air temperature. For the first time in many months, Ferrari arrived at a race with a fully integrated technical and physiological plan. And Hamilton, at the center of that planning, was confident not out of empty optimism, but because he knew that each part of the puzzle had been constructed with logic and vision. In his own words, he made it very clear, "We have done more than prepare a car for the weekend. We have prepared a mentality, a structure and a way of working that not only points to Mexico, but to everything that comes after." And that level of preparation, almost obsessive, can be exactly the difference between staying in the peloton or being reborn on the top of the podium. In Formula One, there are moments that are not seen on screen but that completely change the course of a season. And for Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari, that moment was the United States Grand Prix in Austin. It was there, on the technical and demanding layout of the Circuit of the Americas, where something essential was unlocked: the balance of the SF-25. From the first laps on Friday, Ferrari introduced a radical setup, completely different to what they had been using. The key change was a complete restructuring of the car's mechanical balance. It was no longer just about aerodynamic adjustments or engine mapping, but a direct intervention in the way the car delivered grip at the front and rear, especially when changing direction. To understand the magnitude of this modification, we must go to the technical detail. The team decided to review the incidence angles of the front suspension and modify the stiffness ratio between axles, altering the longitudinal load transfer balance. What they were looking for was to stabilize the rear of the car during braking and corner entry, an area where Hamilton had been claiming since the beginning of the year that the car was nervous and treacherous. With this new base, the car began to behave more progressively. There were no longer sudden reactions, nor sudden loss of the rear axle when releasing the brake. For the first time, Hamilton was able to work with confidence. From that point on, Hamilton stopped talking about problems and started talking about construction. In Sunday's debriefing, after a solid but not spectacular result, he stood in front of the team and asked that the focus of the remainder of the championship change. It was no longer about fighting for each isolated tenth. Now was the time to build a system, to systematize everything learned in Austin, to apply that knowledge to circuits with very different characteristics such as Mexico, Interlagos, or Abu Dhabi. Austin was not a sporting victory, but it was a quiet technical victory, a tactical victory, a conceptual victory. Formula One is not always defined by the results visible on the leaderboard. Often, the changes that truly transform a team occur away from the cameras, in meeting rooms, simulators, and technical conversations behind closed doors. And it is precisely in that silent space where the era of Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari truly begins today. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.